At exactly 9 p.m., a file was uploaded. From a secure laptop in the Ouagadougou Hilton, journalist Sarah Mitchell sent her explosive exposé on President Ibrahim Traoré to her editor in London. The timeline of that night was precise, documented, and utterly impossible. At 9:30 p.m., the same Sarah Mitchell, confirmed by hotel security cameras, checked into her room. Yet at 10 p.m., another Sarah Mitchell, her identity verified by airport officials, was seen boarding a flight to Paris. The paradox of this timeline, a puzzle that defied logic, would only begin to unravel later, when investigators made a chilling realization. There were 3 Sarah Mitchells in Burkina Faso that night. And deep in a service tunnel beneath the city, discovered by maintenance workers investigating a phantom gas leak, the third one was already dead. The impossibility of the situation hung in the air like the Sahel dust. How could one woman be in 3 places at once? The answer began to take shape in 2 separate locations, under the hum of air conditioners and the flicker of fluorescent lights. The first Sarah Mitchell sat in her room at the Hilton, her fingers flying across the keyboard, putting the final touches on what she believed was the story of a lifetime. For 6 weeks, she had roamed Burkina Faso, ostensibly investigating the nation's mining reforms. But her true purpose was far more sinister. The dossier on her encrypted hard drive was a masterpiece of fabrication. Forged financial records, doctored photographs, and audio recordings edited with surgical precision. All of it was designed to paint Ibrahim Traoré not as a reformist leader, but as a corrupt dictator who had secretly amassed millions while his people starved. She paused, her breath catching in her throat, and checked the encrypted message on her phone. The text from her handler in London was brief, clinical. Package received. Proceed to phase 2. A slow smile spread across her face. By morning, her story would be headline news across the globe. The evidence was so meticulously crafted, she'd been told, that even forensic experts would struggle to disprove it. She didn't know the names or faces of the people who had hired her, but their money, deposited in a discreet offshore account, was very, very real. At that exact moment, miles away, the second Sarah Mitchell was clearing security at Ouagadougou Airport. She was a perfect duplicate of the first. The same shoulder-length auburn hair, the same official press credentials, even the same distinctive scar that curved just above her left eyebrow. But while the first Sarah trafficked in lies, this one carried something far more dangerous: truth. Hidden in a secret compartment in her bag were actual classified documents, stolen from the presidential palace by a mole whose identity was known only to a select few. Her flight to Paris was scheduled to depart in 40 minutes. Once she was airborne, the revelations contained in those documents, revelations that would shake Burkina Faso to its core, would be unstoppable. The third Sarah Mitchell, however, would reveal nothing more. Her body lay on a cold metal slab in the city morgue. She had been dead for approximately 6 hours, killed by a single, professional bullet to the back of the head. Her credentials identified her as Sarah Mitchell, an investigative journalist for The Guardian. But the photograph on the ID didn't quite match the woman at the hotel or the one at the airport. It was a subtle difference, but it was there. This was the real Sarah Mitchell, and she had been silenced at 3 p.m. that afternoon. But the true center of the storm was not in a hotel room, an airport terminal, or a city morgue. It was in the private study of the presidential palace. Ibrahim Traoré stood motionless, looking down at 3 photographs spread across his polished mahogany desk. Each showed a different woman, yet all 3 were supposedly Sarah Mitchell. Beside him, his intelligence chief, Colonel Raymond Saougou, stood rigid, his usually composed face etched with concern. "How long have you known?" Saougou asked, his voice a low whisper. Traoré's voice was calm, but tinged with a profound exhaustion. "Since yesterday," he replied. "The real Sarah Mitchell contacted me directly. She was frightened. She said someone was impersonating her, that she had received threats. I arranged for her to be brought to a safe house, but they got to her first," Saougou finished, the words hanging heavy in the silent room. Traoré nodded slowly, his gaze still fixed on the photographs. "The question now is not who killed her. We will find that out. The question is why. Why go to such elaborate lengths to frame me using her identity? This isn't just about discrediting my government. This is about something much, much bigger." He was right, though he didn't yet know the terrifying scale of it all. The conspiracy that had brought 3 Sarah Mitchells to Ouagadougou was part of an operation 18 months in the making, an intricate web involving the intelligence agencies of 3 different countries, a multinational corporation with vested interests in West African minerals, and a shadowy group of former military contractors who specialized in a single, brutal art: regime change. The plan was codenamed Operation Mockingbird, and Ibrahim Traoré was not its only target. He was simply the first domino that needed to fall. Back at the Hilton, the fragile calm shattered. The first fake Sarah, whose real name was Jennifer Blake, closed her laptop with a sigh of satisfaction. The upload was complete. Her work was done. But then her burner phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Room 412. Now, Jennifer frowned. This wasn't part of the plan. Her instructions were explicit. Wait in her room until 11 p.m., then take a pre-arranged taxi to a safe house. Room 412 wasn't even on her floor. In 6 weeks of meticulous planning, her handlers had never once deviated from the script. Something was wrong. Her instincts screamed at her. She pulled out a second, unsanctioned phone and typed a hurried message to the only person in the operation she remotely trusted, a fellow contractor known only as Marcus. Got a weird message. Room 412, not in the plan. Advise. The response came in seconds, and her blood turned to ice. I'm in room 412. I didn't send any message. Get out. Now. Panic seized her. Someone else was in the hotel, someone who knew. She grabbed her go bag, cash, fake passports, a small pistol, and lunged for the door. But as she wrenched it open, she froze. A man stood in the hallway. He was tall, African, and wore a hotel uniform, but his posture, his unwavering gaze, screamed military training. Miss Mitchell, he said, his voice deceptively polite. The president would like a word. Miles away, a different kind of panic was setting in. At the airport, the second fake Sarah, a former Russian intelligence officer named Maria Volkov, watched the departure board. Her flight was delayed. Mechanical problems, the announcement claimed, but she could see the plane sitting at the gate, perfectly fine. A cold dread crept up her spine as she noticed security officers moving through the terminal with an unusual purpose, their stops and checks seeming random, but she knew better. There was nothing random about it. They were closing in. Trying to appear casual, she stood and headed for the bathroom. The stolen documents in her bag felt like a block of lead. Photographs of classified military positions, communication protocols, details of Burkina Faso's gold reserves that could be used to manipulate international markets. If she was caught, it wouldn't just be prison. In Burkina Faso, treason was still a capital offense. Inside an empty bathroom stall, she dialed the emergency number she had memorized. The package is compromised, she whispered, her voice tight. I need immediate extraction. The voice on the other end was calm, professional, and utterly chilling. Negative. Complete the mission. Secondary team will create a diversion in 5 minutes. Get to gate B7. She ended the call, her heart pounding. 5 minutes. She could do this. This was just another job. But as she exited the bathroom, she saw him. Standing near the security checkpoint, surrounded by guards but clearly visible, was Ibrahim Traoré himself. He was looking directly at her. Their eyes met across the crowded terminal, and in that instant, she knew. He knew everything. This wasn't a chance encounter. He had come for her. He didn't move, didn't signal his guards. He simply watched her, and then he did something unexpected. He smiled, a sad, almost pitying smile, and gave a slight shake of his head. The gesture was clear. It's over. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Maria Volkov made her decision. She slowly dropped her bag and raised her hands in surrender. And in the cold silence of a city morgue, the final piece of the puzzle was about to fall into place. Dr. Amadou Kabor, Burkina Faso's chief medical examiner for 15 years, had seen his share of violence. But this case disturbed him. The cause of death was clear, but it was what he found in the victim's stomach that made him bypass protocol and call the president's office directly. She swallowed something before she died, he told Colonel Saugu over the secure line. A memory card, wrapped in plastic. Whatever is on it, she thought it was important enough to hide even as someone was about to kill her. The call from Dr. Kabor sent a jolt through the presidential palace. A team was immediately dispatched. After carefully extracting and cleaning the tiny memory card, they accessed its contents. What they found changed everything. It wasn't just fabricated evidence against Traoré, it was the entire playbook. Hours of secretly recorded conversations between the fake Sarah Mitchells and their handlers, detailed plans for Operation Mockingbird, and, most shocking of all, a list of targets. Ibrahim Traoré was just the first. The operation was designed to destabilize 6 African nations in sequence, replacing their leaders with more cooperative alternatives. The data also revealed the real Sarah Mitchell's true identity. She had not been an innocent journalist caught in the crossfire. She was an undercover agent for British intelligence, MI6, sent to investigate rumors of a massive destabilization campaign. She had discovered the plot and, in a desperate attempt to stop it, had tried to warn Traoré. But the conspirators had found her out. In her final moments, with a gun to her head, she had swallowed the evidence, gambling that her body would be found and that her final, desperate act would not be in vain. She had made the ultimate sacrifice, turning her own murder into the delivery of a message. Armed with this undeniable proof, Traoré knew he could not just play defense. He had to drag the entire conspiracy into the light. He made a decision that would stun his advisors and send shockwaves across the globe. He called for an emergency meeting of the African Union, to be held not in Addis Ababa, but in Ouagadougou. He would expose Operation Mockingbird before the entire world. A week later, Ouagadougou was transformed. The city became a fortress, and the newly constructed Thomas Sankara Conference Center became the stage for a geopolitical drama of historic proportions. Presidents, prime ministers, and ambassadors sat alongside journalists and ordinary citizens. At exactly 10 a.m., Ibrahim Traoré walked to the podium. Distinguished leaders, honored guests, he began, his voice clear and steady. What I am about to share with you will shock you. It will anger you. But most importantly, I hope it will unite us. For the next 3 hours, he methodically laid out the evidence. He played the audio recordings. He displayed the documents. He showed the financial trails that led back to shell companies and powerful corporations. Then, he brought Jennifer Blake and Maria Volkov to testify. Their voices shook, but their words were a damning indictment of the plot they had been hired to execute. Finally, he presented the autopsy report of the real Sarah Mitchell and played her final, haunting message, recorded just hours before her death. The hall was transfixed in horrified silence. When Traoré finished, he invited the ambassadors from the implicated countries to respond. The American and British ambassadors, career diplomats who had been kept in the dark, expressed their shock and promised full investigations. But it was the Canadian ambassador who provided the most dramatic moment. She stood, made a call on her phone right there in the hall, and then announced, "I have just spoken with my Prime Minister. He has ordered the immediate arrest of the mining executives implicated in these recordings." The hall erupted in applause. It seemed like a total victory. But even as the applause echoed, the conspirators were implementing their final, brutal contingency. At 2 p.m., as the conference broke for lunch, Ouagadougou exploded. 3 car bombs detonated simultaneously, near the conference center, at the main hospital, and in a busy market. The chaos was immediate, the carnage horrific. A previously unknown group, the Sahel Liberation Front, claimed responsibility, but Traoré's intelligence team, now on high alert, knew it was a fabrication. They traced the bombers, who had been hired by the same network behind Mockingbird, to a handler in Paris. Within hours, working with outraged French police, they raided an apartment and captured him. The game was up. The failure of Operation Mockingbird, however, triggered a new kind of war. The conspirators, unable to win with spies and bombs, turned to their most powerful weapon, the global financial system. Several Western nations, citing concerns about governmental stability, froze Burkina Faso's foreign assets. The message was clear: submit or be crushed economically. That evening, Traoré received a phone call on his private line. The caller, an American, was coldly professional. "You're playing a dangerous game, President Traoré. Release Blake and Volkov, destroy the evidence, and this all goes away. Leaders who oppose us don't tend to live long. Ask Gaddafi. Ask Sankara." The mention of Thomas Sankara, Burkina Faso's revolutionary hero, assassinated in a 1987 plot widely believed to have foreign backing, was a deliberate, cruel jab. But the threat backfired spectacularly. The overt bullying created something the conspirators had never anticipated: a wave of unprecedented African solidarity. The presidents of Ghana, Mali, Niger, and Senegal issued a joint statement condemning the sanctions and pledging economic support. The African Development Bank announced an emergency loan package. Even China and Russia, seeing a strategic opportunity, offered immediate financial assistance. The attempt to isolate Burkina Faso had instead united a continent. Yet, a nagging doubt began to form in the mind of Colonel Saogu. As his team reviewed the mountains of data, something felt off. For such a sophisticated, multinational operation, the conspirators had made mistakes that seemed almost amateurish. The abandoned memory card, the clumsy communication that allowed Jennifer Blake to become suspicious, the easily traceable bombers. It was almost too neat, as if they had wanted to be caught. The victory felt hollow, scripted. The breakthrough came from a young, brilliant computer specialist in the newly formed African Defense Initiative. Aminata Dio had been bothered by the same inconsistencies. Looking not at the data they had, but at the data that was missing, she analyzed the gaps, the silences in communication from that fateful night. And there it was, a fourth signal. A highly encrypted satellite phone that had been active for just 3 minutes. Its signal bounced off multiple satellites to hide its origin. Patiently, she unraveled the layers of misdirection until she found its source. Her blood ran cold. The signal had originated from within the presidential palace itself. Cross-referencing security logs, she found that only 5 people had access to that section of the palace at that specific time. President Traoré, Colonel Saogu, the communications director, the chief of staff, and Dr. Kabor, the medical examiner who had found the memory card. When security forces arrived at Dr. Kabor's home, it was too late. He was dead, an apparent suicide, with a note confessing to being a double agent. But Saogu knew this was just another layer of the deception. A final message in the note confirmed their worst fears. The game is larger than nations. Africa's liberation is just another move on the board. Trust no one, not even your victories. The horrifying truth crashed down on Traoré as he flew back from a regional summit. Operation Mockingbird had been designed to fail. Its exposure was the real operation. The goal was never to install a puppet in Burkina Faso. It was to use the ensuing scandal to drive a wedge between Africa and the West, pushing the continent into the sphere of influence of new powers like China and Russia. They hadn't won a victory, they had played their part in a grander, more cynical manipulation, trading one form of dependency for another. But as he stared out at the African landscape below, a grim smile touched Traoré's lips. "They think they've been playing us," he said to his aide. "But what if we knew? What if we've been playing along?" He picked up his secure phone. He didn't just call his allies. He called Beijing. He called Moscow. He called Washington, London, and Paris. "The great game stops now," he told each of them. He announced his intention to host a new summit, a truly global truth summit, to expose not just one operation, but the entire system of manipulation that had governed the world for centuries. 5 years later, the world was a different place. The African Defense Initiative had become a model for other regions. Jennifer Blake and Maria Volkov, granted immunity for their testimony, had become leading figures in the fight against disinformation, using their insider knowledge to dismantle the very systems they once served. In Ouagadougou, a simple stone pillar stood as a monument to the 3 women who had inadvertently changed the world. It was inscribed with 3 names: Sarah Mitchell, the journalist who died for truth; Jennifer Blake, the operative who chose redemption; Maria Volkov, the mercenary who found a conscience. During the ceremony marking the anniversary of what was now called Information Independence Day, a young British journalist approached President Traoré. "I'm writing a book about Operation Mockingbird," she said. "There's one thing I don't understand. How did you know? How could you have been prepared for something so complex?" Traoré looked at her, a faint smile on his face. "Because, young lady, this wasn't the first time, and it won't be the last. Africa has been a target for centuries. The methods change: slavery, colonization, and now information warfare. But the goal remains the same. Operation Mockingbird failed not because we were lucky, but because we were prepared. They thought they were hunting us, but in reality, we were watching them from the moment they entered our country." "So you knew from the beginning?" the journalist pressed. "We suspected," Traoré corrected. "When the real Sarah Mitchell contacted me, the pieces fell into place. We could have arrested them immediately, but that would have only delayed the operation. By letting it play out, we exposed the entire network. Weren't you taking a huge risk? People died. Traoré's face darkened. Yes. And I carry that responsibility every day. This is war, even if it doesn't look like one. And in war, there are casualties. He turned to leave, then paused. Tell me, what's your name? Sarah, she said. Sarah Williams. Traoré laughed, a genuine, hearty sound. Of course, it is. Well, Sarah Williams, I hope you're really who you say you are. As he walked away, he reflected on the new reality. Africa was stronger, more united, but the threats had merely evolved. Deepfakes, AI-generated disinformation, quantum hacking, the game was more complex than ever. The phone in his pocket buzzed. It was Colonel Saugu. Mr. President, Sayogo's voice was urgent. We've received intelligence about a potential threat to the upcoming global summit. Multiple sources suggest someone is planning to disrupt it. Another Mockingbird? Traoré asked. No, sir. Something different. Something we haven't seen before. He was quiet for a moment. The fight was endless. But so was their resolve. Double security, he ordered. But do not cancel. If we stop every time they threaten us, we will never move forward. Yes, sir. And sir, the British journalist, Sarah Williams, has requested a private interview. She says she has new information about the real Sarah Mitchell that we need to know. Schedule it, Traoré said. But have her vetted. Thoroughly. Somewhere, new operations were being planned, new Sarah Mitchells were being created, new games were beginning. A cryptic message had already begun to circulate on the dark web. The three became one. The one became none. The none became all. Phase 3 initiates at the summit. No one knew what it meant, but it was a chilling reminder that the game wasn't over. It was simply evolving. But this time, Africa was not a chessboard. This time, Africa was a player. The three Sarah Mitchells, one dead, two reformed, had taught them that. Their story had become a legend, a cautionary tale that had inadvertently triggered a revolution. And as the world held its breath, waiting for the summit that would define the future of truth itself, everyone knew that whatever came next, they would be ready.